So first of all, you probably all know who we are, or you wouldn't be in the room right now, but it's always worth just going back to basics and asking who is the Education and Training Foundation? Well, there's a couple of ways to answer all these questions, and let me start by saying we are quite simply the government-backed, sector-owned improvement body for further education and training. But a different way of answering who we are is we're a small charitable company. We have fewer than 50 staff, but we have a huge role commissioning national improvement programs. And why do we exist? Well, again, one answer to that is because the three representative bodies of the sector came together, supported by a broader coalition of bodies, and created us for the common good and for learners' benefit. But a different way of answering why we exist is because government knows and understands that every sector of education needs an improvement mechanism. And it knows that that improvement mechanism needs to be invested in. And it has learnt through quite bitter experience, I think, that mechanism will be more effective in the long run if it is set up outside government, not as part of government. What we do, well, I've got quite good at this. Part of my job is to travel around the country a lot, visiting colleges and training providers and others. And usually at some point in those journeys, there's a leg of the journey between the train station that I've got off at and the college or wherever I'm going to. And unless they're very nearby, I tend to get a taxi. So I've got really accustomed to explaining to taxi drivers what I do. And it's actually quite hard, because what we do is quite complex and quite multifaceted. And I've boiled it down to this. We train the trainers. Everybody gets that. We train trainers and we teach teachers. But of course, we also develop leaders. We support governors. We inform managers. And we set standards. And just as importantly, we provide a professional home for further education staff and the Society for Education and Training. Another way of answering what we do is we respond to whatever needs either the government or the sector tell us they've identified, and we move in to fill that space. And how do we work? Well, we work by commissioning through open competitive tender large, medium and small programs and projects. But a different way of answering that question, which I like better, is we work in partnership. We work in partnership with sector-based bodies, managing contracts with clearly defined benefits and outcomes for the profession, for providers, for employers, and of course for learners who are our charitable beneficiaries. And finally, where are we going next? Well, we're at the end of our third year of operation. We've established an effective track record now, and we've learned a lot in the first 3 years about how best to do our job and how best to help the sector. We're looking at the next 3 years with really quite considerable confidence of continued government investment and the opportunity to play a central role in supporting those who make such a difference to our economy and society. And very specifically, lastly on this, where we're going next is I'm delighted to say that in the last week, really in the last few days, DFE has confirmed that they'd like us to take on an additional 10 projects this year that we've agreed with them, all aimed at addressing head-on the challenges that have been thrown up by the area review process or by the Sainsbury review and the skills plan. And those additional projects represent significant additional investment from DFE in workforce development. And I think they're a very strong sign of the way the government is viewing the importance of workforce development in FE and indeed the importance of teaching leadership and governance. Okay, so here's a whistle-stop tour of who you'll find in the room when you go back to the terrace. And who there is to talk to. And I make no apologies for the speed of this. We do a lot, and you don't have a lot of time, so here we go. Start, of course, with Future Apprenticeships contract. Apprenticeship support is After English and Maths, the biggest area of work for us, extremely significant. It's a vital programme. It's delivered by a consortium of partners led by ALP, who have considerable expertise in this area, of course. And do ask Alison in particular about endpoint assessment and the work that we're doing there. The way these slides works, by the way, is there's 2 pictures on every slide. The left-hand picture is a member of our core staff in ETF. The right-hand picture is someone who works with us, either as an associate or in a delivery partner or in some other capacity. Maths and English we've already touched on, of course, and it's our single biggest area of activity. Very multi-level training and support program, really with something for everyone. Managers, leaders, specialist teachers, non-specialists across all subsectors. And Sue Southwood is here, who really is very expert in this area. The Society for Education and Training is the professional home for teachers and trainers. It connects you as a member or your staff to communities of practice, to latest research in teaching and training, to news and to opinions about policy development as well. It's not a club. It's a professional association which has at its heart the objective improving outcomes for learners. That is what all our work is about, and that is what the Society for Education and Training is about as well. As indeed is QTLS, Qualified Teacher Learning and Skills, which is the FE's own professional accreditation programme. We inherited this status from IFL, and we've reformed it very significantly this year. It now has the sector's professional standards at its heart and a more rigorous assessment process. So if your staff have achieved this recently, you know they've cleared a very challenging hurdle. My advice would be look for it when you're recruiting and think about how you can support your staff to pass through it, because it's a very important developmental process and a badge of quality in future. Executive leadership is part of the broader theme of leadership, of course, and I think it's fairly incontrovertible. That's going to be the single biggest issue facing our sector in the next 5 years. We have a new top leaders programme coming online next year. There are many chances to influence that. We've had many discussions, we're having many discussions with people all across the sector and beyond, from other parts of the public service and indeed the private sector. But today is another chance to influence it. Frank McLaughlin is here today. Do talk to him about top leadership, hear how the ideas are evolving, and tell him what you'd like to see in our top leadership programme. The other aspect of leadership, of course, is non-executive leadership, or governance, as we typically say in colleges. And I think governance is going to be a real growth area for the ETF over the next few years. It's been thrown sharply into the spotlight by the area review process and by the Further Education Commissioner. And we have delivered a lot of support and training in this area, especially with the AOC, but also with other partners. Sadly, Maureen's not with us tonight. She couldn't be with us. But again, speak to Sir Frank about governance in the year ahead. A completely new area this year was supporting providers of all types with the prevent duty. It's been hugely popular, our online training. Over, as I said there, 120,000 staff, governors, leaders and so on have used our online training. And it's really quite a good example, a very good example, I think, of how the ETF has the capacity to step in quickly and to meet a new need that's been identified, in this case by Ofsted, I should say, but recognised by many that it was an acute need. Selina Stewart is a recognised expert in this area, and do speak to Selina, or indeed to Joni, who is a senior leader in adult education and also very knowledgeable on prevent. We're really proud of our work on offender learning. It's not the biggest thing we do, but it's probably the most challenging teaching environment and also the area with the greatest potential to change lives. There's a big reform agenda for the Ministry of Justice. That's not all about education. They have a huge number of challenges, of course, but a real determination, I think, from that part of government to improve the quality and standard of teaching in prisons. And do speak to Teresa and Poonam about the work that we're doing with and for staff in prisons and other parts of the secure estate. You can't make good policy without good data. You won't necessarily make good policy just because you have good data, but you absolutely need it. And you can't really manage a provider as effectively as you might without good benchmarked data about your own institution. And our workforce data services aim to meet both these needs. So this is what we provide now with the staff individualized record, which we have completely reformed, and we've turned it into a new product called SIR Data Insights. This is the place, this is the method for gathering very rich data about the workforce in further education and training, and then playing it back to institutions so they can benchmark themselves against other institutions in the sector, but also gathering that and feeding that in to the policy-making process so we can get better informed policy. Absolutely key role. We're not just about data. Research is extremely important, and in particular, one area I want to bring out, because it's a sort of personal passion of mine, is supporting the development of a research-literate teaching profession. You'll have probably noticed the OECD PISA report coming out just a few days ago, and it shows lots of fascinating things. But the thing that jumped out for me was that it shows, perhaps not surprisingly, that key to educational success is high-quality teaching. And one of the keys to high-quality teaching is that teachers have a knowledge of research findings, an ability to apply them in a classroom context or a workplace context, and then the icing on the cake, the ability to extend that research with new research themselves. A research-literate profession is just so important for the quality of our system. We're very pleased to work in partnership with WorldSkills UK. We grant fund WorldSkills UK to run a really fantastic set of activities around skills shows and skills competitions. They reached about 100,000 young people in the last year, mainly through the National Skills Show in Birmingham. And if you haven't been to the Skills Show in Birmingham, then you don't know what you're missing. Get there. It's just a fantastic event. It is the national finals of skills competitions where you can see the best young people in their skills, in their trades, in their professions competing. It's absolutely fascinating. They then go on to Euroskills, which was in Gothenburg very recently, and WorldSkills. We're very excited about our partnership with them because very high competition standards, international standards, are a very powerful tool for teacher development. So do speak to Laurence, who's here today. And last but by no means least, the work that we do for staff working with learners who have special educational needs or disabilities. This is an area that we've always done some work in over the last 3 years, but we've just significantly increased this year because we led a consortium that won a new contract from the DFE to do some new work in this area. So we'll be ramping up this in a very significant way. And again, please do talk to Sue about that work, which is so important. That is just a section of who's going to be in the room. People will be wearing badges that tell you what they're there to talk to you about. So just move around and mingle. I will be there, so I'm sure there'll be questions from what I've just said that people will be wanting to ask. Indeed, many of ETF's board members will be there and all of ETF's executive directors. So this is when the conversation starts. Hold the questions in your mind, and if I can invite you all back to the terrace and where you came in to the next part. Thank you very much.